Hey, and welcome to the PublishPress Podcast. I'm Steve from PublishPress, and we help publishers succeed with WordPress. And I'm here with my co-host, Dan. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Steve. I'm Dan Knaus. I'm a solutions architect at Multidots, an enterprise WordPress agency that works often with large publishers and media organizations. We were talking with Pete today and full on into really interesting stuff about the point where publishers and search and AI and advertisers meet, and that is the paywall.
It's having a moment right now. I think a lot of people are discovering the value of putting a paywall on their content with AI hoovering up whatever it can. That some of these magazines and newspapers that are Pete's customers are discovering they're sitting on a goldmine full of content that they may have issues going back 40, 50 years. They may have decades of news stories that can turn their ordinary newspaper or magazine into a successful business in 2025. And Pete's helping them do that. So I think you're going to find this conversation super useful.
Yeah, it was great. The intersection between paywall product and a newer newsletter platform that Pete has integrated into a single WordPress solution that can be customized for smaller or larger niche publications, all kinds of organizations with content they want to protect or define that relationship, how it leaks out. That's what we got into today on the subject of Leaky Paywall and Pete Ericson.
Hey, Pete, welcome to the PublishPress Podcast.
Hey, Steve, thanks. Happy to be here.
So, Pete, you are Mr. Leaky Paywall. It's a slightly unusual name. I guess people who spend a lot of time in the publishing industry might understand the name and where it comes from, but what's the background there? What does Leaky Paywall mean? How did you get the name?
Honestly, it means leaking some content in order to, engage your audience and build your subscriptions. That's the elevator pitch. But it stemmed when we built Leaky Paywall about 10 years ago, maybe even 11. The British publications were calling the metered paywall a leaky paywall. That's
Are you blaming the Brits for this?
Yeah, we're totally blaming them for it. And when we decided we needed a name, we're like, oh, that's catchy. So let's take it. And honestly, some people hate it, and some people love it.
Well, I guess it's kind of related to dripping to some extent. You're dripping out the content,
exactly,
article by article.
It's like porous autoclaved cement. That's what I always think of for some reason.
So the whole philosophy is having a paywall that is not hard, right? The opposite of a leaky paywall is a hard paywall where people absolutely have to pay for almost all the content. But a leaky paywall is dripping content out. We had Tyler, who works for you on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he was saying you guys have a philosophy of one-on-one. So you leak or you drip one free piece of content for anyone, and then one piece of content when people register, and then you have to pay to join the site.
Yeah, that's our general operating philosophy. If we had to spin a bottle in the dark, it really depends on the part of the journey that the publisher's in, on how tight to make the paywall. So just to see as a couple examples, if you're a startup or a publisher that's starting up your first paywall, maybe even your second paywall because your first one didn't work so well, you generally are in a state of fear. Like we deal with, we're kind of therapists in a way because publishers are really nervous about turning on the paywall, and we deal with it over and over again. So in the beginning, we say, look, you have levers, right? Like you can, and the Brooklyn Eagle, which just launched with Leaky Paywall, they're one of a lot of examples where they wanted to make sure everything's working. They want to make sure that they don't tick off their audience too much. They want to make sure that, they can sleep at night. And so what they did is they decided to give away, if you go to their site now, they give away 3 articles on the meter and then you register for 2 more and $5 a month. So it's a generous setup, and it's a purposeful setup because they're nervous. But then in 2 weeks and a month, they can sort of tighten the valves on Leaky Paywall, and then they can boost their email registrations and their conversions as they tighten things up. But they need a lot of publishers need to start really generous because it's just an emotional, it's a big change in their business setup, right? And then once they get comfortable with that, yes, then the 1-in-1 is generally, or 1-in-2, depending on, like, if it's a bigger publisher, they may go 1 on the article, for free on the meter, and then you have to register to get like 2 more or 3 more if it's a big news publisher. And so that's sort of the sweet spot where you get, and really the first number 1, that's the key, right? Because your average session from a reader is 1 or 2 articles. So when that reader hits the second article, that the registration wall needs to come up and say, hey, give us your email, we'll give you more content, and you'll get the newsletter, right? And that works like magic.
A lot of these publishers feel like putting up a paywall is really taking their relationship with the customer in their hands, and really, what else does a publisher have apart from the customer relationship? And so turning on a paywall is a moment of extreme nervousness, of risk almost for them.
Absolutely. And yet I would argue, in the way we set it up, is that you're actually going to engage that reader better. You're going to get their email address, first of all. They have the control. Once they have the email, they have the control over how generous they want to be with that reader and their content. We're all used to subscription systems. So if the publisher wants to give away 10 articles a month to people that register, they can do it. No problem. Go for it. You're not going to convert much in the paid subscription department, but go for it. That's what the New York Times did 5 years ago, something like that. They started with 20 articles a month, and then they went to 10, then they went to 5, and now they're at 0, and with a registration.
It kicks in pretty quick. So has that nervousness gone away a bit in the industry? Because nowadays you hear like it's become a standard tool almost, and having a more gated membership experience that people can't just take for granted seems to have really become a standard now.
Yeah, I agree. Netflix helped pave the way for that. But, we tracked the New York Times when we were building Leaky Paywall. We saw that their metered paywall was working. We're like, yeah, let's just build that.
I mean, they went from almost bankruptcy to really enormous revenues for a publisher, right?
Yeah.
The paywall worked wonderfully for them.
Yeah, I wish I had the chart, but if you look at their revenues from when they launched their metered paywall to today, you actually see in the last 5 years or so that their subscriptions have actually they've grown, and in the last 5 years they've accelerated.
Nice.
So, and they passed ad revenue and print ad revenue and all revenues years ago. I don't know if it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Their digital subscription revenues all of a sudden became the priority, and that's why they went into games and recipes and other content, essentially.
So you've seen you've been in this about 10 plus years now. So you've seen publishers' attitudes change over time. Are they warming up to paywalls? Certainly, there's a lot less reluctance to put a paywall on content than there was 10 years ago.
Yeah. There's the need. I think the need was there 10 years ago, but I think the need is just more clear to publishers today. The nervousness remains, but the clarity on publishers, they're not Google, they're not Facebook. They need the revenue, and the reader revenue. If they produce good original content and their audience likes it, they will pay. They will donate. They will do all the things that the publisher needs, for sure.
Well, there's a line coming now, I think, between publishers that want their content out there, ones who want their content ingested by AI, who benefit from having their content sucked up by the web, by Google, by AI bots. For example, we run a plugin company. It's absolutely to our benefit to have ChatGPT come to our site and suck up all our documentation. That's wonderful, but not for publishers. They need to run quickly in the opposite direction, right? Away from having their content commoditized and sucked up.
Well, that's a
The
great
paywall
question.
is even
Depends
more
on where they are
essential in the
in
age
their
of AI.
journey. That's really the answer. So back to the sort of the new startup publisher that's just getting onto subscriptions or trying to get it right. They need to build their audience first. Like the big priority with AI
True.
and just it's always been this way in Google and social anyway, is get that registration wall up. I mean, it's the screaming, burning number one priority for publishers to do. And it forces the email in order to get more content. That's their superpower, right? Their content. And so AI is coming in and it's scooping up all this content and we're all using AI and it's great and I love it. But there's still this sort of intro period right now where you still build your list really quickly with a reg wall and build your audience and double your list, triple your list in the next year or so. And then what happens is publishers will tighten up the registration wall to say the 1-on-1 you talked about earlier. But then when there's confidence and it's right, you start nervous and all of a sudden you start building your email list. Then you start, you're building your paid subscriptions. And all of a sudden you get to that point where it's like, hey, okay, we have a solid email list. We know what content resonates with our readers. We know readers will pay for our content. We're chugging along nicely. Boom. Now we turn that next valve and we make it a hard paywall, right? And so that blocks AI, it blocks Google, it blocks social sharing, it blocks all these things. But that's okay because at that point in the journey, they've built their email list. Their newsletter is huge. It's driving tons of traffic back to their site, which is popping the upgrade messaging or whatever other messaging they need to pop. And it's working. So we have plenty of publishers that are in that sort of end game in their journey. And still they have the option of doing like what the New York Times does, where you can have like 0 articles, but if you register, you get 1 or 2. That's a great way to set it up. And then boom, they still keep building their list because you got to drop off your email in order to get more access. And then from there it's pay. And that's kind of the end, sort of the end game. And that's where like the New York Times is right now. They've been doing it for 13, 14 years. I can't remember.
So for the publishers that you work with, the newsletter is almost on a par with the website, that they are 2 essential parts of the same strategy.
Yeah.
That if you don't have a website, you're not in business. If you don't have a newsletter, you're not in business. Those 2 are very tightly connected, right? I mean, you started with a WordPress plugin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you've been adding newsletter services as well?
Yeah. So we started with the Leaky Paywall plugin back 11 years ago, and we sold it and it went okay. But we realized we needed to be on the WordPress repositories. So that was a big game changer for us. So we threw our core version. It's a limited version. You can get subscriptions going with it. And that got us a lot of attention and downloads and people reaching out, and that was super helpful. Then we learned that we actually needed to talk to our publishers because they didn't know what the heck they were doing. Digital marketing is not in their wheelhouse. In the past life, we were an agency, digital agency. So we were building publications using our own software. We stopped doing that when we got enough volume on the software side. And so now we do quite a lot of onboarding work to help the publisher get things right. So when they launch, they're building their email list. They're converting paid subscriptions. They're getting all the nonsense, all the pop-ups, all the junk off their sites, and then the newsletter clearly became the engine, like the direct marketing engine, right? That would, as soon as you collected an email, you put it on your newsletter. The newsletter set it up right, and it's pushing people back to your website, and it's targeting that person, producing the upgrade messaging you need, and that's where Flow Letter kind of came. And Flow Letter came. Now we have a great integration with MailChimp and other platforms, but we were seeing pain points like, okay, you got to log in with subscriptions now. Well, that's a huge pain point, right? Now you gotta and so publishers are getting, some publishers not so much. Some publishers are getting a lot of, depending on their audience, email requests or, hey, how do I log in? I can't log in. Huge pain point, right? And then copying and pasting into MailChimp or a third party. That's for some publishers that produce a lot of newsletters. That is so much wasted time, right? So publish in WordPress. Right. And then
also flow letter, you haven't quite defined it as this, but it's actually sitting inside WordPress, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
They don't have to go to MailChimp or go to another platform.
Right.
Well,
so they can copy and paste inside the platform. It's
an AWS based system that WordPress integrates with basically your user subscriptions. And with how does that work out? Are they very custom deployments per client?
Yeah, so they can be. I mean, we use Newsletter Glue is the editor, so that's part of our platform. And what we usually do when we onboard a publisher is we'll take a look at their MailChimp templates and be like, okay, this is your template. We'll make a copy of your MailChimp template. Usually there's input like, oh, we kind of want to improve it a little bit. Okay, great. And then here's the template, and then the publisher just kind of grabs the template, drops in the post content into the template, schedules it to publish, boom, off it goes.
So do you give them some consulting? You give them a little playbook? I mean, how often are the successful publishers sending out their newsletter? Are they hitting every day, every morning, every evening, once a week? How often do the successful publishers send out?
Dang, that's an awesome question. As much as possible. That's the real answer.
Okay.
So, on the news, if you're like a news publisher or local news publisher, then the answer is probably daily. You're going to have a morning newsletter. You may even have an afternoon newsletter if you're like in the local news space. People want the content. There's some opportunities with like premium newsletters just on like early delivery in the afternoon for paid subscribers. But you really that cadence needs to be pretty aggressive, and there's definitely a correlation between the frequency of your newsletter and your conversion of paid subscribers. If you're a magazine publisher, if I can keep going down this rabbit hole, you're kind of in a different space. Most larger magazine publishers are interested in building their email lists. But to please advertisers, not to please their readers. That's we talk to a lot of them, and that is their thing. They got ad revenue, they want to push the ad revenue, and so that their cadence has been like sponsored emails. Lots of them have like pure sponsored emails that get kicked out, which is amazing to me because you feel like you'd have a wave of unsubscribes when they do that. So then the magazine publisher decides to get into paid subscriptions, which is smart. And now they have to like really start balancing how aggressive is their advertising on their site, how aggressive is the advertising in the emails, and really focus on delivering content. Same thing though, if you're publishing a lot, some magazine publishers have, they have their magazine content, they got their news content, and then it's a daily or at least like 3 times a day occurrence. Then you get to the small, super niche-y, like digital onlys, and they're magazines, quote unquote. They serve like a super niche audience, and they may only be publishing an article a day, right? Or really long form, high quality, super low volume articles. Okay, well, what do you do then? Well, if you do an article a day, you got your daily, or maybe 3 times a week, right? You start, if you're doing long form, you probably have evergreen. So now you start pulling archives into your newsletter stream. And I'd say that kind of rough answer would be for really small, low volume, long form content publisher, try to shoot for at least twice a week, 3 times a week if you can, pull those archives. Most readers haven't read everything.
So you recommend quantity when it comes to sending out the newsletter, that whatever a publisher probably thinks is acceptable, you should probably go beyond that into what may make you feel uncomfortable at first. Like, should I be emailing twice a day? Should I be emailing once a week? most publishers may be emailing once a month by default. You recommend just upping the quantity, contacting your audience more and more.
Generally speaking, I haven't seen a publisher ever oversaturate, unless it's sponsored advertising content. On the most extreme side, sports publishers are crazy. I mean, if you know,
way.
Like if you're we worked with a Pittsburgh sports teams publisher, and he had apps, and he was sending out notifications through the apps on average like 7 or 8 times a day. Okay. Because if you're following, if it's your favorite team, you just and something happens, tell me now, right? That's crazy. We're just nuts about sports. So that works for them, and then it kind of that's the extreme, and then it scales down from there depending on your audience.
Are you seeing any greater sense of nuance from different clients now, different publishers, where they realize Google is now, they've probably always been reading everything that goes through Gmail, but because of gated systems and because of publishers going all in on newsletters, they seem to be reading that more closely. And now it sort of becomes a question of, well, what stuff do you want to tease out to the AI bots? What things do we want to expose? And does that help us? Are there situations where the paywall kind of works for humans, but you're still trickling out things in a different way for search?
Yeah, I mean, you can always tell the paywall what to let in. So if you could block everything, but if it's coming in from Google, let it in, or Chat, OpenAI, let it in. You can do that. The sort of the traditional approach, publishers, and I don't know if this answers your question, but and I'll just go back to Brooklyn Eagle. They choose certain articles that are hard locked. These are premium only articles. And yeah, that will keep out AI, that will keep out Google, and it will keep away social sharing. Is that the right approach? I would argue no. In the beginning of that journey, when the publisher is just launching and getting their email list built, you want social sharing, you want discoverability, you want Google, you want all that, because when people come in and then they hit the reg wall real quick after one article, you get the email, and the value of that email is everything, right? So yeah, you're going to have AI in there. Now, the thing I tell publishers is they think they know what their premium articles are, and they're wrong. They don't, because the reader knows what's premium, because the reader decides through the meter what they want to read. They see something on Facebook or whatever, they click it, they come in, and they made the decision that this article is important to me. This may be an article that was written very quickly and is quote unquote lower value than the premium content, but it doesn't matter. That individual reader decides this is, for whatever reason, this is really important to me, right? So when you pick and choose, you're always getting it wrong as a publisher. So let it in, and then, but then when you're down towards the end of that journey, you just start locking everything down, because now you have a big list. Now your subscriptions are growing. Now you have momentum and confidence, and that's how you approach it.
There's also kind of an interesting scenario where the ability for an LLM to basically like a docs bot, where you feed it a huge trove of information, and then it becomes like the New York Times archivist. And that's really a much more effective way to assimilate a long-term or specialized or database trench of knowledge. Is that coming up in the radar of some newspapers maybe that go way back in time? Search for that has always been really difficult. And the Times paywall is weird, or you hit those sites where they've scanned things from the 1800s. But if that was all there available in search, and then it makes you look like the expert because it's citing you and getting you back in, is that something you're thinking about or seeing publishers consider as a new opportunity?
So when you say found in search. What do you mean? You mean that your archive is always available in search?
That now you're being greeted with your queries with really the chat bot response, and mileage varies on that. But I've noticed when I'm targeting especially historical data that I know certain publications specialize in, or something very targeted that way, suddenly if you can tell that certain sources, and then it's citing them, like very like industry publications, or something of a local and historical nature, it's either there or it isn't. And if it's there, you get quite a lot of stuff right there in the summary, and then it tells you, kind of cites the source, and maybe that's the click that you want, because now I'm kind of doing research on a refined level. I'm clearly in your market here, and I'm seeing you now as like long-term source data experts I might want to pay and talk to. Is that kind of the mind shift that's there for some? I don't know. And how does a paywall work in that?
That is awesome. What an awesome thought. No, we don't really.
That sounds like a hyper advanced strategy.
Yeah, I love it.
Feeding the AI very carefully with what, maybe not this last year's data, but 10 years with good data that no one else has.
So my brain jumps to, we worked with the Austin Monitor in Texas for a long time, and they've changed their model, but they were basically archiving all like the town hall, like votes at town hall and all, really deep dive. They were heavily into real estate and what was going on in the area. And they were basically building an archive of like, how did something vote? And I have a friend who's a real estate developer, and his part of his mission is to dig into like, what were the rulings? What were the votes? How did things go? And he's trying to like assess, can I buy this property and develop on it? Like, there's just so many like details in terms of and I'm not a real estate expert, but on all the sort of rules and regs on a controversial piece of property. And that kind of an archive could be, like you say, a total gold mine. Yeah. So if I were that publisher, I'd be using AI to create that database for me, right? And for my paid subscribers. I think that's how the paywall would interface with that. And then you you become a paid subscriber, you get access to it. And the way they set it up is they charge more for archives. They were charging like $100 a month or something like that for archive access, and it worked. It worked for them for years. So,
do many of the newspapers you work with actually have archives online? I know most of the papers probably have an enormous batch of old printed copies sitting around somewhere, but very few of them seem to have digitized their old content. Their online content may go back 10 years max.
Yeah, they don't value the old news because news is like, the lifespan of news is what, 24 hours or 48 hours maybe, or something like that. So they're not really prioritizing that. But when you're dealing with magazine publishers that have, or long form content publishers, they're really concerned about their archives. So they're digitizing. Like the quick solution is digitize your print copies into PDFs. Maybe put them into the e-edition flipbook thing, and then just lock them down with the paywall. But the right solution is to actually copy and paste the text over time, because it takes time, it takes money, is get each issue out in a web-based format so it can be shared on social, because nobody shares a PDF or a flipbook. And then you build what I tell magazine publishers is, look, you launch an issue, like all your articles are web-based, great. Now you got Google, you got social sharing, you got all that. Now take an archive and copy and paste and do the same thing. So you're going one issue forward, you're going one issue back, because each article is like a magnet for search and now AI or whatever. So, and like we did, so when we launched Modern Drummer magazine a while ago, they had sort of they took their last 12 months of issues and copy and pasted the images, the text, they formatted it and put it in a web-based format. People started subscribing, and then every month they went back one issue In a year, they had doubled their traffic. And it was like, it was ridiculous.
So they're sitting on a gold mine of content,
Right.
but it's a real pain to, I mean, that's probably one of the very best uses of AI I've heard when it comes to WordPress in particular. There could easily be an AI tool that could extract your old content from PDFs and turning it into WordPress content.
Let's build it.
I was just thinking the same thing right now.
Yeah, it would be that's a great use case, because right now there's no good way other than copying and pasting and bringing the images, and then you got to format the text and make sure the links are active and all that. It's a lot of work manually, but even manually it's worth it. So yeah, if we could get AI to figure that out, that'll be a hit.
You think of Modern Drummer magazine, I mean, it probably goes back 60, 70 years maybe. I don't know exactly how old it is, but some of these magazines may have, I mean, you publish once a month, 12 issues full of content going back 50 years. That's a treasure trove if it could be accurately turned into WordPress content.
Yeah, we have a publisher who rented a high resolution scanner for a week. It was like $2,000 or something, some super duper scanner. And he basically sliced up all his archives back to the 50s and spent an entire week feeding print pages through this scanner in order to build up his archive. Great idea.
Time well spent, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're actually better off with an image in a lot of cases. ChatGPT, others I think they're using Python tools to basically scrape through documents, but I've seen some nightmares where people like used Word or something to create the PDF, and some of the text is actually embedded and coded as text, and other things are not, and the layouts are random, and it completely failed in one project. I was trying to do that. You're better off just, now they just read the image. You take a photo or something, and your phone can already read that text. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to do it that way.
Yeah, I agree. PDFs are the next best thing, essentially, or images.
So we're in the era of Notebook LLM, the Google's product that does the research. You can just drop in a 400-page book in PDF form, understands it like that, extracts the text. The more complicated magazine layouts, maybe the magazine publisher doesn't care too much to have maybe the original design doesn't even translate too well to the web. If you extract, say, a 2-column layout in print and try and turn it into an article.
They're the magazine publishers, if they're printing, and some of them are doing startup print runs. I mean, they're very concerned about the print product. Like, that's their main product. And a lot of them are like, we'll take some digital subscriptions, and they do get a mix. So Track and Field News, they've been around for a long time. We've had them for a client for a decade or more. They get a mix of print and digital subscriptions, a real healthy mix of both. Right now, they're more kind of they're print magazine. They've always been, but they're sort of in the news reporting world. When you deal with like coffee table style magazines that are like beautifully designed and all that, they're going to skew more towards like the print and digital subscriptions versus the digital only subscriptions.
So some of those publishers would really value the flipbook option, where they put so much time and effort into their layouts that they'd want people to have a magazine style experience on their website.
They do, and the flipbook is under huge debate because it's just a terrible format, right? And on an iPad, on a desktop, it's tolerable, but on a phone, it's almost unusable. A PDF, like what we just mentioned earlier, an image or a PDF would be even better, because then you could just quickly pinch and zoom and get into the content versus trying to click buttons to figure out how to zoom in on a flipbook manager.
So are you seeing a lot of success with these hyper niche magazines converting to successful online publications. You've mentioned a drumming magazine. You've mentioned a track and field athletics magazine. You have quite a few more examples of just magazines, publishers in a really strong niche, making it work online.
Yeah, like Cal Fly Fisher, California Fly Fishing Magazine. That's a super niche. Like it's all about fly fishing in California. And I believe that was purchased and revamped. And now they have a beautiful site. They have a print product, which is, I don't know how many times per year. And they kind of have it all going on now. So yeah, very, very motivated to sell print, very motivated to sell digital subscriptions. They kind of have the nice combo going. So yeah, they're the niches are, I mean, when you have aquarium landscaping magazine, like there are niches everywhere.
Wait, hey, aquarium landscaping is having an aquarium inside your outside landscaping?
No, it's like the landscaping in the aquarium. Right?
Oh, flipping it. Okay.
Yeah, it's like you have a fish tank. Okay, well, we gotta keep the fish happy. So how do you do that?
What about academic institutions or places that, any institution that has like a long historical archive or intellectual property they're interested in monetizing or protecting? Have you taken on those kind of projects?
Yeah, we worked with Harvard for quite some time. They have their law school has a magazine, and it's a professional development publication essentially. And they did quite well with it. And they're still running it. I think they took their development in house recently, but they were selling. Last time I talked to them, their big sale was group subscriptions, right? Like corporate subscriptions. So they were selling to law firms. Like that was, they would get, attorneys would buy subscriptions, but essentially they'd be selling 100 seats or the whole firm gets access, and they would just be taking a check and then giving access to the content. I mean, if you're producing original content and it has value, and reader revenue is a good path. Digital ad revenue is a tough path today.
Yeah, I'm just really interested these days in how there's kind of these competing interests to what do we expose to AI, but it also can create this value add, for at some point in maybe 10 years ago or even more, it was noticeable where that you have this kind of inch wide but mile deep tranches of information, like all these books came online, or the Oxford English or National Biography was a big online project. And that's essentially mapping out like a social network for like a whole period of time. If you want to know who's related to who did business with who, they didn't set it up that way. But if you expose deep historical information to an AI, suddenly you have this major research tool, and that's sort of been free. Like I had things where there was like a light switched and on the internet, and suddenly I had these, old books and things for my family, and I didn't know what they were. And there were actually references to old publications 200, 300 years back. And that's got to have some immense value, but I don't think anyone, it's kind of like me. Is that like the next level of paywalling where you kind of partner with a research portal? Is anyone looking down that? Like, why do you want this information, or what, or how can we help you query, find what you're looking for maybe those niches?
Yeah, that sounds almost like GPTs built specifically for a specific niche.
Ancestry.com or something.
Yeah.
ChatGPT for ancestry research.
Yeah, right. So I've never gone through the process, but I imagine the difference would be you could sign up and just start asking it questions, and then just have this this dialogue where you're digging, or then you're at the dinner table and somebody says, but who is that person related? Oh, wait a second. Let me go, go in and which would be a game changer for sure.
So Pete, with the advent of AI and with the death of advertising, it seems as if being a paywall company helping people sell subscriptions online, you're in a very nice spot right now. You're working with these companies that are often sitting on a gold mine of information that can be repurposed to sell online subscriptions. It could be aquarium landscaping. It could be California fly fishing. If you have 50 years of issues, then those magazines that maybe a couple of years ago looked like they were dying, suddenly because of the intersection of where things are now, it turns out that an apparently dead magazine is sitting on top of a lot of valuable content, and ways to monetize that online. A lot of your customers are maybe seeing a strong uptick in their business right now.
Yeah. If they get the setup right, it's building their lists and building subscriptions. Absolutely. And it's building their traffic. And the thing that, bringing all that archive content online, it's just every article just shows up and all of a sudden gets search traffic, all of a sudden gets social traffic, right? And then if you're sending it through your email, you get the email traffic. So you have all this sort of virality of every single individual article that you bring back. And the content is a superpower for a publisher. That's its superpower. So yeah, do whatever you can to bring all that old content back, and then people will pay for access to it. It's something that publishers still today, 10 years ago, yeah, good idea. Until still today, yeah, now it's a really good idea. And, yeah, we're going to start that. And I do see it more and more. But it's still a big lift, and an AI tool to make it easy would be amazing. But yeah, that content is everything. And can I speak to your comment about advertising is dying?
Oh, are you going to object to that?
I don't think it's like dying, but digital advertising, the way we think about it today, yes, it's sliding. The ad, like if you plop in an ad network, like Google Ads or some of the other ad networks, and it's popping up, and you're doing video slides in and pop-ups and sidebars, rails, and all that. Yeah, that revenue tends to be sliding. There's controversy over the numbers, like the bots that are out there clicking the links. Are you really getting, is the advertiser really getting the clicks and all that? And yeah, so that is like, what is it? 40+% of us use ad blockers. Like, there's literally a war against online advertising in the traditional digital advertising sense. But if you look at sponsorships, it's like sponsored content, that's a totally different game. And that's really what I see the ad industry heading towards. So that means direct sales, right? So now, instead of just dropping in ad code and letting the algorithms do their job, you're reaching out, and you probably have someone who's selling those ads, and the ads are now sponsorships, and they're being baked into your content. You have full articles, you have your email newsletters, you have, sure, you'll have some display ads and things like that, but it's a gentler, more powerful approach. You don't need as many sponsors. The sponsors match your audience and your content. Like the good ones are perfectly matching that. I mean, just look at YouTube, right? Like, you get product placement or sponsorships. Like, these things work, as long as what your sponsor is providing actually helps your audience. Boom, this is the way.
Oh, it's mutating. Advertising is changing from the way, let's say, advertising as publishers used to run it is dead. Perhaps it's getting more sophisticated.
One of Leaky Paywall's many add-on extendable features is the ability to let kind of corporate sponsors underwrite either their own, maybe their own employees' subscription, or a set group of people. Is that something you see future in, or are people using where we actually have people who want to make sure we're reading these publications, instead of advertising directly, kind of underwriting your professional subscription, something along those lines. There's so much stuff I skip, but I would probably, I'd probably follow that Substack more closely if they had a discounted or free one for people that are in their market niche.
Yeah. Yeah, the corporate subscriptions, the group subscriptions are big for some publishers. They, if they have professional groups to go after, or it could be recreational groups. Like I think one of these extensions we built for soccer coaches, groups of soccer coaches, right? So and they needed access to Soccer Coach Weekly in the UK. And
there you go. There's a very good niche product.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, that works great. Another thing that's working well too is like physical location access by IP address. And so, like, you're sitting at Panera Bread, and your access to the local newspaper or business news or whatever is this was a business journal that did this, and you're sitting there and you get your business journal access sponsored by Panera, right? That shows up because you're sitting at that location. So that kind of approach, it gets the word out about the sponsor, gets people in, groups of people in. It's sort of the next step. Once you get your registration, subscription, individual funnel going, that's sort of the next step. Okay, what schools can I get in? What libraries? What corporates? Clubs, like family plans for local news. Get 5 seats for your whole family, like that. There are lots of variations.
So we're seeing a flowering almost of paywalls and paywall strategies. They're getting more sophisticated. They're getting more advanced, more custom, more targeted. What may have started as a simple sign up and pay system has evolved into a myriad of different approaches.
Absolutely. And that's part of the need to talk to publishers and walk them through what's possible, and it's like, okay, phase one, get the foundation built, and there's a lot of things publishers want to do. You talk to them, they have all sorts of ideas. They're great at creating ideas. And okay, but phase one is phase one. Get the reg wall up, get subscriptions going, get launched. Okay, phase two, and then whatever newsletter usually is phase two, and then whatever else they need to talk about, the group subscriptions or promotions or pricing, trials, discount. I mean, there's a never ending stream of conversation there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pete. And we have one final question that we ask everyone on the podcast, and that's our blog roll question. Everyone that comes on the podcast works with publishers on a day-to-day basis. You see a lot of publishers. Is there one whose work stands out, whose work that you really admire at the moment? Someone who's, when their newsletter drops in your inbox, you always read it. Who is doing really good work in the publishing space at the moment?
Whose newsletter do I read every time? I'll tell you which one it is. It's a newsletter called daybreak.news. It's our local, one of our local news publishers. It's just right now it's a MailChimp newsletter. That's it. There's no, and it's a donation model, but it's a curation. So where we have like the Valley News, which covers sort of is a traditional newspaper, and they do a good job. They don't really curate like Daybreak does. So Daybreak, they're tracking what's going on Reddit and YouTube and at Dartmouth College and all these different, and the newspapers, and then writes a clickable title to the source, a short excerpt of what, his take on, Rob's take on what this means. And it's like, it's probably 10 or 15, short excerpts. And then below that is like 10 calendar event type of things that are happening in the area that are good to look at. So every day you get a super scannable email that you can look at in 5 minutes. You know exactly all the stuff that's going on in the Upper Valley, and you might click, you might not. He's got some sponsors that are a couple sponsors in every single newsletter. Now he's looking at building a website finally, which is great. But that kind of like super local news, curated newsletter, it's great.
Such a simple business model. one guy reading the web, curating it into a newsletter, hit
Yep.
publish.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pete. I wish you all the best with Leaky Paywall.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Been a pleasure knocking things around with you guys.
Yeah.
And if you want to build that AI PDF tool, hit us up.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Let's talk about it. Love it. All right. See you guys.
So thank you, Pete.